You feel like he's more of a dad?
No, not more of a dad, but more of a like a handsome character.
Okay, that makes sense. He
But listen, I'm not saying Joaquin Phoenix is not handsome, okay? But but he's just
for people like our good buddy Joel, he's a great role model.
Yeah, he's a great.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Average Joe Football Show. I'm your host, Joe Fair. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Spider-Man's favorite football podcast. I'm sorry, I really couldn't think of anything.
No, that's good.
I just saw I saw Tom Holland trending on Twitter, and I was like, oh, Spider-Man. And then we could talk about who was your favorite Spider-Man.
So now we're going to talk about who my favorite Spider-Man
it's really
was.
up to you. We don't have to.
Wow. I honestly...
In fact, I almost don't even want to.
Okay, we don't have to.
No,
but,
it's fine.
I have not a criteria, but like, is it a criteria? I don't know. Who did what the best in terms of Spider-Man?
You like kind of break it down?
The man Spider himself, yeah. I do break it down. I definitely think that Tobey Maguire, the first one, was the best nerd, but he was way too old looking to be Spider-Man. And then Andrew Garfield. Like the thing with Andrew Garfield in The Amazing Spider-Man is that is just the fact that those were pretty good movies, but he's not the greatest Spider-Man. He's a good actor. I appreciate him as an actor. I loved him in Hacksaw Ridge. But as far as Spider-Man and like being true to the character, really,
I'm gonna go out on a limb, having never seen one of his movies with him in it.
Okay.
I mean, I think I've seen an Andrew Garfield movie, but I've never seen him in Spider-Man before. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say he's the worst one.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's almost too cool. He's almost too cool to be a Spider-Man right off the bat. I definitely think so.
Yeah.
He's kind of Tom Holland is pretty good. He's the young part.
Yeah.
That's the best, is he's the youngest.
He's got that nailed down.
And Peter Parker was really young when he became Spider-Man, according to the original comics and stuff. Yeah, Tom Holland's a really good Spider-Man, I think. Overall he is the best. Tobey Maguire still is a better nerd, because Spider-Man was a little nerdy kid.
Yeah, Tobey Maguire plays that well, like the loser.
Yeah,
kind of.
But he's not a good actor.
No.
Not in that movie.
He's good, and I thought he was good in Spider-Man. But then they started making multiple sequels of it, and they got really weird. Some of the sequels, I think it was like the third one. It's a weird movie.
The trequel, you mean? The third one?
The trequel.
Yeah, it is. That's one with Venom.
Yeah. And like he has like long black hair, and it's like he's like an
long.
emo thing.
It's not long.
It's just weird.
He just has his bangs, and he just kind of takes them and puts them on his forehead instead of.
And he does like a weird dance too, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's a confidence thing. It's like
like he's confident because he's Venom now, or like I don't know.
Brings him a new cocky confidence kind of thing.
Okay, so you know more about this than me.
I'm kind of like a movie guy.
You're a movie aficionado.
Yeah, I kind of think about that. But
before we get any deeper into this is the Average Joe Football Show. We talk football, we talk Spider-Man, we talk whatever you really, whatever you would really want to talk about. I talk most of the football. Joe's my producer, Joe Thiessen, who I'm joined by.
You say my last name.
Illustrious producer, Joe. Well, it's because I say Joe Fair. I say my full name at the beginning, so I got to get your full name in there as well. I'm joined by you again. And we're going to get into football at some point. We're going to get into Julio Jones potentially being traded. It's seeming more and more likely like Julio Jones is out in Atlanta. And we're going to get into a two-part segment that we're going to talk about on the next two episodes. We did this last year around this time. I looked it up, and it was almost exactly around this time. I'm going to give you one big question for every team heading into the season. This week, it's the AFC. Next week, I'm doing the NFC. So we're going to split it up 16 and 16 just to kind of, keep it a little shorter. So we're going to get into that. Really excited about that. So make sure you guys, before we start, subscribe. Smash that like button.
Everybody. Reel it in.
You're okay. Give us a 5-star review 5-star. I'll maybe handle it from here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll cut the note.
Okay. Yeah. Let's just make sure you do all the good things that we would enjoy. Make sure you share the podcast. It helps a lot if you share the podcast. We can only do so much. We need your guys' help. Spread this podcast.
I can only make so many fake accounts to subscribe with. Okay. I'm running out of ideas for passwords on my emails, so I cannot keep doing this. It doesn't work anymore.
It's becoming a hassle.
Yeah.
I think it's borderline illegal at this point.
Yeah.
Also, okay, back on the Spider-Man thing. I thought that so when Andrew Garfield was really into it, and I just want to say that I have not seen very many of the new Spider-Man movies. I've seen one with Tom Holland in it.
Okay.
I saw none of the Andrew Garfield ones. I think all of the ones with Tobey Maguire in it. I thought Tobey Maguire was probably the best. I thought there would be never somebody to come in and be better than him. But I now think it's not even close. I think Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man.
Yeah. Tobey Maguire is too old.
Yeah, I think
a little bit too old to play him.
And I'm not a comic book guy. I've never read any comic books like that. Well, I guess I have like as a child, but like not like some of the old comic books that people are like so into or whatever. But I just feel like if you're thinking about Spider-Man, Tom Holland really encapsulates Spider-Man.
Yeah, he did a good job with that. But isn't he done now with Spider-Man? Like, didn't his contract? They've gone through too many Spider-Mans.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much.
But it's such a popular franchise. It's such a popular character, I guess. Like Batman. Well, they did it with Batman too.
Yeah.
Who do you think was the best Batman?
Oh, that's Christian Bale.
Oh yeah.
It's not even. I also have never seen the one with Ben Affleck.
Really?
But I'm just gonna assume that he's not as good as Christian Bale.
Which one? What was it called? Movie? Did he play in
Batman versus Superman?
Batman versus Spider-Man.
Batman versus Spider-Man.
That wouldn't even be close, dude.
Dude, Batman would win.
But okay, was there not a solo movie? Was it just Batman versus Superman, or did he have?
Pretty sure it was just Batman versus Superman.
Oh, he was in Justice League, right?
Oh yeah, he was probably in Justice League. Yeah, I never saw that movie.
I did watch Justice League, but I don't.
He definitely was in Justice League.
I don't
recall.
There was no
other Batman in there. I love that we're just talking about movies that. Well, I guess you've seen almost all of them, but I've seen almost none of them.
Yeah.
What's the guy? Edward Pattinson? Is that his name?
Oh, Pattinson?
Robert Pattinson. Edward was the guy in Twilight.
Edward is his character in Twilight.
Edward.
Ignorant guy.
Edward Snowden. Right?
Yeah, Edward. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
No, he's the new Robert Pattinson's the new Batman. Which is
wow. We could go on with this best Joker. This is
that one's. Okay, actually, I forgot about Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah,
he's actually really good at what he does.
You got to think here. There was Jack Nicholson. He did that once. And then, so the big three, Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger. Obviously, Heath Ledger was amazing. Rest in peace. Rest in peace. Oh, gosh.
Rest in
peace, Heath Ledger. Anyways.
Rest in Heath.
Yeah. And then Joaquin Phoenix. My goodness, that Joker movie was good.
I think.
Really good.
And with all due respect, I'm not... Obviously, Heath Ledger dying was incredibly tragic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that him only doing that one movie, though, was probably good for his legacy. It's not good that he died. I'm not saying it's good that he died. Obviously, it's good. Maybe it's good that he only had that one movie because people didn't kind of get burnt out on that character or whatever.
Yeah.
It was like because it's incredible. The Dark Knight, I will say, is one of my all-time favorite movies.
The trilogy is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's really good
movies. The Dark Knight. I'm not a big superhero guy, really. I don't really like superhero movies all that much. Especially not usually DC ones, but The Dark Knight is one of my all-time favorite movies. Like, that movie was incredible.
The Dark Knight was really good. The new Joker movie I love that movie.
Oh, so good.
Joker is such a good movie.
That's probably up there. Like that, if you guys have not seen the new Joker movie, I mean, Joaquin Phoenix, he gives Heath Ledger a run for his money. And he just goes totally, it's not even close to the same character. Like
it's a different idea.
It's almost like you can't even compare them because it's like a totally different thing.
I feel that way as well.
But yeah, he took it in a different direction. Really good. It's not even really a superhero movie.
No, it's a piece of gold. That's what it is.
I
loved it.
Watch that movie again.
Another DC movie, Inception, I think.
Inception.
A couple other ones.
And you're saying
Pursuit of Happiness. Fargo.
Stuart Little.
Yeah, Stuart Little, I think. As well. All pretty good ones that I liked from the DC side, at least.
Yeah, for sure. I think we basically come to an end of talking about these movies. Or what do you think?
Maybe.
I think we're,
Yeah.
Unless you got anything else to say.
No, like I think I've basically said all that I need to all I need to say. So.
Yeah, I think I'm basically bored of it already. So, I'm ready to move on.
All right.
How you been lately?
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
No,
did you think I was moving on to football
Yeah,
now?
I did. Honestly.
No, not yet, man.
Pretty good.
Yeah. You done anything cool lately?
No.
Okay,
well, we went away. This is great podcasting.
Yeah. Okay.
What have you been doing?
Same old. Same old.
We went away on our honeymoon. First anniversary, which was basically a honeymoon because we never got to go on one
because of COVID. Yeah.
Because of COVID.
And.
Yeah, we went.
Nice.
Yeah, it was pretty boring, but it's okay.
That's what you want to hear out of a honeymoon.
Yeah, we got to relax.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do when you're celebrating your wedding.
Nice.
You want to relax,
Very
right?
Good. I'm coming right up on the end of my
maternity leave.
Paternity leave.
Parental leave.
Yeah. Or papa
leave.
Yeah. Paternity leave. 3 weeks. I'm almost done. I guess technically it's done now.
Yeah, you're going back to work on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's the weekend. By the time you guys are hearing this, I'm back at work again.
Oh yeah.
Wow. I feel like I've really grown as a person. I'm not the same person I was before. Well, not only am I a father, I've done a lot of new things. I'm into walks now. Yeah, going for walks.
You're into walks?
Yeah, I like walks.
Okay, I like walks too.
I kind of like that a little bit before all this because I would sometimes walk here to record the podcast. But like walking with me and my wife and my son, it's fun. It's like,
do you think that when I have a kid that we're gonna do like dad walks?
Yeah, we should. We should start a club.
Dude, you ever seen What to Expect When You're Expecting?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I like that dad group they have going on.
Okay, who's better? Who's better in what to expect when you're expecting? I don't remember any of the characters. I was just making a joke.
Oh. Heath Ledger or
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix. And What to Expect When You're Expecting.
Which one do you think would do a better job in that movie?
Oh man, it depends. As a dad or Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger, you feel like he's more of a dad?
No, not more of a dad, but more of a a handsome character.
Okay, that makes sense.
Listen, I'm not saying Joaquin Phoenix is not handsome, okay? But but he's just.
For people like our good buddy Joel, he's a great role model.
Yeah, he's a great. That's so good.
Almost nobody's gonna understand that joke, but
great.
We should maybe move on to some football. I feel like this has been probably the most pointless banter we've had.
But pretty good, honestly.
Yeah, pretty good. Joel,
I think so.
If you're listening,
this is really good, dude.
This is really good. Really good.
Thanks, man.
Did a little fist bump.
We're both so sweaty.
Yeah, it's really hot in here. So let's maybe get this thing going. Let's jump into the news. We're now approaching that time in the NFL season where things are slowing down a little bit. The draft is over. Free agency has been over for a while. Training camps starting. Rookie mini camps have now started and ended. So we're kind of getting into the slow period of the NFL offseason. We're just under 4 months away from the start of the NFL season. So we got a ways to go. So things are slowing down. There's not a whole lot going on in the news. There's a bunch of little stuff like people saying Joe Burrow's going to be ready for week 1, or like this player's a full go in training camp who was injured last year and stuff. I'm not going to get too much into stuff like that. Mainly because it's not interesting for me to talk about. And I don't really want to talk about stuff like that all that much. But there is one main news story that I definitely feel like I have to talk about because it's one of the biggest things happening in the NFL right now, aside from training camps. The Julio Jones situation is heating up quite a bit. We talked a little bit on, I think, last week's episode about Julio Jones potentially not being a member of the Atlanta Falcons in the future, and things have really heated up since then in that department. First, we had the Athletics' Jeff Schultz report that the Falcons would like to, quote-unquote, deal Julio Jones to... I think I used quote unquote wrong there. I was trying to use it once in one part of it, and I used it in the wrong part. That's unprofessional. But anyways, Jeff Schultz was reporting that the Falcons would like to deal Julio Jones. And if you are not like a diehard NFL fan, you might be wondering why in the world the Atlanta Falcons would want to trade Julio Jones. It doesn't make any sense. Julio Jones has been a dominant receiver for years in the NFL, and probably still could be a top 5, top 10 receiver in the NFL. And really, not a lot of people might know, but the Atlanta Falcons are in salary cap hell right now. They are one of the worst teams as far as salary cap. They don't have a whole lot of money left, and they don't have a lot of players signed. They can't even sign their rookies to contracts right now because they don't have enough money. So they're really strapped for cash, and that's why we're seeing them potentially ready to move on from probably the greatest player in their franchise's history. I mean, Julio Jones has been that good. He's a future Hall of Famer, without a doubt. He's just been a consistently top 5, really, for most of it, the best receiver in the league. I had him ranked as my number 1 receiver going into this last season. He obviously was injured. He only played 9 games this last year. Still put up really good numbers when he was playing, but just wasn't available. He struggled with injuries last year. The year before that, he struggled with some injuries as well. But when he's on the field, there's no doubt he is a dominant contributing force for the Atlanta Falcons, and I'm sure he can be a help to any team that wants to bring him in. But we had Jeff Schultz coming forward and saying the Falcons would love to deal Julio Jones just because of salary cap issues. His salary cap hit for them is $23 million this year. He's got a $15 million salary, and it would help them out tremendously if Julio Jones is not on the roster. They're in a cap crunch, and we talked about might not have been last week. It might have been the week before. We talked about Kyle Pitts, how the Atlanta Falcons brought in Kyle Pitts to be a part of that offense. And, we talked about how potentially it could be scary, an offense with Julio Jones, Kyle Pitts, and Calvin Ridley on there. And then you have like Hayden Hurst and guys like that. They signed Mike Davis, the running back from Carolina. And just that could be a dominant offense. But now it's starting to seem, the more you look at it, that maybe Kyle Pitts was that draft pick was not so much somebody that was drafted to pair with Julio Jones, but maybe he was signed to replace Julio Jones. And maybe if Julio Jones is gone, Kyle Pitts kind of slides in and plays more receiver. He could essentially play the same role that Julio Jones plays right now, that big, physical, athletic freak of a receiver. He could come in and just, you don't want to say he can come in and easily replace one of the greatest receivers we've ever seen, but it's starting to seem like that was maybe what the Atlanta Falcons had in mind when they made that pick for Kyle Pitts. So it's seeming more and more likely that Julio Jones and Kyle Pitts will never see the field together at the same time. They're most likely not going to be together. It seems to me moving in the direction that Julio Jones will not be a member of the Atlanta Falcons. The team that would trade for him would likely only trade for him officially on June 2nd. June 2nd is when his deal becomes more manageable to trade. So they'll likely wait until June 2nd to trade for him. In my opinion, if I'm a team, if I'm a competitive team, if I'm a championship contender, I absolutely do whatever you can to get Julio Jones. I understand that his salary cap number might be a little big right now, $15 million. I think it's a little less. I think it's like $11 million base salary next year. So it goes down a little bit. But to me, even though Julio Jones struggled with injuries last year, when he played, he was one of the most dominant receivers. And you had Calvin Ridley playing incredibly well for the Falcons last year. But when Julio Jones was on the field last year, and I know because I had him on my fantasy team, he still put up huge numbers. And I think he's still capable of being a really top 3 receiver in the NFL. I would not be surprised whatsoever if Julio Jones is back to form this upcoming season. He is 32, so he's getting up there in age. He's not young anymore. Receivers don't really play as long as, quarterbacks play in the NFL. So he's getting a little bit older there. But I think there's still a good few years left in the NFL for Julio Jones. Jeff Schultz, who reported that the Falcons would like to move Julio Jones, also reported that there's a few teams that he thinks are interested in Julio Jones. Those teams that he listed are the Baltimore Ravens, the San Francisco 49ers, the New England Patriots, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Los Angeles Chargers. And I'm going to be writing an article on bluecollarmediagroup.com. Make sure you guys check that out, bluecollarmg.com. Within the next few days, I'm going to be writing an article about this exact situation. landing spots for Julio Jones, where I think Julio Jones could end up, and I think is intriguing. I think he could absolutely be a huge asset for one of these teams, or for one of these teams that's not listed. Say a team like Kansas City or something comes out of the blue inside. Like, that would be game changing. If Kansas City goes out and signs Julio Jones, that would be almost unfair. I still like Julio Jones. I think he's got a lot of good years left. I think whoever signs him is getting a really good football player. And we also had NBC Sports Boston's Michael Hawley reporting that Julio Jones himself, I don't know where he got this information from, but he's reporting that Julio Jones wants to play for the New England Patriots. That's where he wants to go. He apparently wants to play with Cam Newton. He also believes that Matt Ryan lost a little zing on his deep ball, which that hurts. That stings a little bit for Matt Ryan. So there's reports that Julio Jones wants to play in New England. That would be an interesting spot for him. I don't know if that's the best spot, just like quarterback-wise. Also, if you're looking for a quarterback who's not past his prime, if you're worried that Matt Ryan is past his prime, maybe don't go to another quarterback that's probably past his prime. But apparently Julio wants to play with the Patriots. We've also had other players in the NFL trying to recruit Julio Jones to their team. We had DeAndre Hopkins on Twitter trying to recruit him with some funny things that he was saying. Derrick Henry was trying to recruit him. I think A.J. Brown was involved. So a lot of players would be extremely, extremely excited to bring in Julio Jones. And like I said, I'll be writing an article within the next few days breaking down all of my favorite landing spots. But I think there's a lot of really interesting teams. And if I'm a contending team, I'm absolutely doing everything I can to try to trade for Julio Jones. And I don't think you're going to have to give up a first-round pick, especially with how big Julio Jones' contract is. I think you can probably give up a second or maybe a third and a player or something for Julio Jones because his contract is so big. He's aging. He struggled with injuries. I think you could get a real bargain with Julio Jones, and he could be a real difference maker. The Patriots just make sense. They've done this over and over again. They've traded for veteran receivers. We saw them trade with the Falcons for Mohamed Sanu a couple of years ago. Gave up a second-round pick. That was a complete disaster. They brought in Antonio Brown last year. That was also a disaster. They brought in Josh Gordon. Obviously, they brought in Randy Moss when he looked to be past his prime. Ended up having amazing, amazing years with New England. So we've seen the Patriots do this before, bring in veteran wide receivers. So maybe this is something that they do again. There's been talks that the Patriots have had internal talks about bringing in Julio Jones, but this is definitely an intriguing topic. Hopefully, by the time you're hearing this, Julio Jones is not already on a new team, or else this was all pointless. But that kind of wraps up the news. It's basically just the Julio Jones stuff. That's the big news happening this week. So why don't we jump into one big question remaining for every team in the AFC. So we're now into the end of May. That's right, the end of May. And
and it's going to be June.
It's going to be June. Love that song. We've gotten to the end of May. The draft is over. Free agency is over. A lot of questions have been answered for a lot of teams. Teams like the Chiefs, there was a lot of questions around their offensive line. Those questions got answered this offseason. Teams like the Jets, there was questions about who their quarterback was going to be. Were they going to draft a quarterback? That question got answered. There was questions like, where's Mac Jones getting drafted? That question got answered. But, not everything can be answered. Some things just go unanswered. And you can't answer every single question in the NFL. So we're going to go around the AFC this week. And I'm going to give you one question that's still unanswered for every single team. We're going to call it one big EA Sports big. Hey, Joe? No? Okay, nothing? All right. One big question still remaining for every team in the AFC. And we're going to start things off with the AFC North. We're going to start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They won the North last year. Started off 11-0 before collapsing and losing in heartbreaking and embarrassing fashion to the Cleveland Browns in the NFL playoffs. And my big question for the Pittsburgh Steelers is, can this O-line hold up? One of the big reasons why this team collapsed after going 11-0 was their offensive line. They had big issues, especially running ball. They were the worst team in the NFL running the ball yardage-wise. It was not really all that close. They had no no yards rushing. I mean, they could not run the ball. Didn't matter who was running, Benny Snell or James Conner, who's now in Arizona. It just did not matter. They could not get anything going running the ball. And I think a big reason for that was the offensive line. The Steelers seemed to think this offseason the answer was to go out and get a new running back. So they got Najee Harris. I like Najee Harris. He was probably my favorite running back in this draft class. They brought him in. They're hoping that the answer was that they didn't have the right running backs on their roster. If you're asking me, I think the biggest issue was the offensive line. And this is an offensive line that got worse than they were last year. They didn't get better. Marquise Pouncey, the longtime center there in Pittsburgh, he retired this offseason. Alejandro Villanueva is now in Baltimore. And if you look at their offensive line, it's rough. I mean, they don't have a whole lot on their offensive line. I mean, just some of the names that are on their offensive line. So at left tackle, they have a guy named Chukwuma Okorafor, who's not somebody that I know very well. They have Kevin Dotson starting at left guard. J.C. Hassenauer, don't know how to pronounce that. He is their center. David DeCastro, who's a recognizable name, he is their right guard. He's a fine right guard. He's not anything to write home about. And Zach Banner starting at right tackle. That's probably one of, if not the worst offensive line in the NFL. And it's going to be interesting to see. You know, you have an aging quarterback in Big Ben. He's not a guy who can, make plays with his feet anymore. You know, he used to be really good at not getting sacked because he's so big and really elusive in the pocket. He might not be athletic, but he was able to avoid sacks pretty well. As he's getting older, that stuff's getting harder. And there was no holes for your running backs last year. Can Najee Harris make something out of nothing? And I think he's going to have to. And to me, the biggest question for the Steelers is, this is a team that's ready to compete. They're going all in. This is, they could have tore it down a little bit and rebuilt. They could have said goodbye to Big Ben, drafted a rookie quarterback or brought in somebody else and kind of restarted. But they said, no, we're going to go for it one more shot. And they think that they can build on that 11-0 start last year. And maybe they can. But to me, the biggest question is if you want to compete, this offensive line needs to hold up. And you got to hope and pray that all these no-name offensive linemen that I just named can hold up. And to me, this is the scariest part for the Steelers. They have one of the best rosters probably in the NFL, especially defensively. I mean, their defense is unreal. But if that offensive line doesn't hold up, none of that matters. So to me, that's the biggest question for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then moving on in the AFC North to the team that came second, and it's the Baltimore Ravens. And my big question for the Baltimore Ravens is, can Lamar and the pass offense take the next step? We just talked about how the Pittsburgh Steelers were the worst rushing offense in the NFL last year. The worst passing offense in the NFL, yardage-wise, was the Baltimore Ravens. They are not an explosive pass game. And you can say what you will about lack of receivers for Lamar Jackson. He needs to improve in that scenario. He is lethal as a runner. He won an MVP just a couple years ago. Still a fantastic young quarterback, but he's coming into a contract year. There's big questions around whether he can take that next step. And I think he needs to take that next step for it to be easier on both him and the Baltimore Ravens when it comes to signing him to that new contract. It's really interesting to think. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this contract, because Lamar Jackson's just a little bit different than some of these other quarterbacks. And we've seen over and over again with the Carson Wentz extension, with the Jared Goff extension. Some of these teams jump the gun and they sign these guys to extensions and they end up regretting it. I'm not saying that Lamar Jackson is going to be a mistake if you extend him. He's a phenomenal quarterback. But if all of a sudden you extend him before this season and he doesn't take that step, Rashad Bateman comes in, who they drafted in the first round, and he can't help that offense. Sammy Watkins is not a big, asset, and they still can't get a 1,000-yard receiver. They still are one of the worst passing offenses in the NFL. It's going to be, there's going to be people questioning it because, they had the worst passing offense, but the best rushing offense in the NFL. So they have a run game, but to me, and I've said this over and over on this podcast, and I say it, I said it in some of the articles that I wrote, especially around draft time. You know, the running game is only going to get you so far. You can only get yourself to a certain point, I think, in the NFL season with a dominant run game. Eventually, your pass game needs to step up, and you need to be able to play from behind. You need to be able to come back in games. And I found a stat that kind of puts this in perspective. So Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield, they're both drafted in 2018, both drafted in the same year. And the consensus, I think, is that Lamar Jackson is a better player than Baker Mayfield. I believe that to a certain extent. Maybe not as a passer, but I think better overall player. Probably Lamar Jackson right now is a better player than Baker Mayfield. And I really like Baker Mayfield. This is not a knock on him. But you take their numbers. Okay, Lamar Jackson in those 4 seasons that he's been in the NFL, I think it's 4 seasons, right? From 2018 to now. He's played, let me just look it up here, 3 seasons. 3 seasons. In the 3 seasons he's played in the NFL, he's had 2 fourth quarter comebacks and 4 game-winning drives. So in 3 years, he's had 2 fourth quarter comebacks and 4 game-winning drives. You know, you take Baker, who, like I said, most people consensus is probably he's not as good a quarterback as Lamar Jackson. Baker's got 6 fourth quarter comebacks compared to 2 for Lamar Jackson and 7 game-winning drives. And to me, that is what sets Lamar Jackson in this offense apart from some of the other passing offenses in the NFL. Sure, they are explosive and they can just hammer teams with that run game. But we've seen time and time again, until last year, Lamar Jackson had never come back from down 10 points. And you can't succeed like that in the NFL. We see, teams like the Chiefs, they'll get down in a 21-point hole and they'll be able to come back. And you don't even need to do that. You just need to be able to come out of a deficit. And you can't be, to me, a championship team without that ability to come from behind and to rely on your passing game. And that's what I think the biggest question is for the Baltimore Ravens, Joe's Baltimore Ravens. Can they improve their passing game? On to the Cleveland Browns, who lasted the longest out of all these AFC North teams in the playoffs this last year. Had a phenomenal season last year under Kevin Stefanski. His first year as head coach, got a big win without him against Pittsburgh in the wild card round, and then made it to the divisional round to play the Kansas City Chiefs. Went toe-to-toe. Baker Mayfield went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes in an incredible game. One of my favorite games from this last season. And my biggest question, though, for the Cleveland Browns going into the season is Baker that dude? That's how the kids say it nowadays, I think. Is he that dude? I feel like such a... Joe, you going to help me out this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't say that. Okay. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, thanks.
Don't say it like that.
Okay. Well, it's too late now. I already have it written down. Is Baker that dude? Another guy going into his contract year. We talked about Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson going into his contract year. We don't know if he, can take that next step. He's won an MVP. Baker has not won an MVP. Baker, like I said, hasn't really been as good or as consistent as Lamar Jackson. As a passer, maybe he's been better, and he had a tremendous year last year. I mean, he threw for 3,500 yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and that was improved from like 21 interceptions last year. So just overall, incredible improvement from the year before under Freddie Kitchens. And this team was really dominant at times. I mean, they had some good wins down the stretch, and that win against Pittsburgh was a big statement win for this team. And I think, this is another roster, like all 3 of these rosters. I think they're ready to go. All 3 of these rosters have talent all over, very few holes. But we gotta ask questions about those holes. And the one hole we have is we don't know, if Baker can be that guy. We don't know if Baker can be the franchise guy. And this is a loaded team ready for a championship run. And can your quarterback elevate the players around you, or does your quarterback have to be elevated by the players around you? He's surrounded by talent. Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. I mean, there's just loads and loads of talent. Austin Hooper's there. I mean, this team is stacked, and defensively now they have a ton of really good players. But can Baker Mayfield be the type to elevate the players to an even higher level, or is he a guy like we saw maybe with Jared Goff in Los Angeles, where he everything's got to be perfect around him, everything's got to be clicking nicely? Can he be a Patrick Mahomes, where he elevates the players around him? Can he be a Tom Brady, where he comes in? I mean, that's obviously asking a lot. It's the greatest quarterback of all time. And, Patrick Mahomes, who's probably going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And you don't even need to be that. But to me, this year, you need to find out, is Baker that guy? Is he worth all that money? Is he worth a brand new contract extension? Is he a guy that can win you games? And that's the biggest question for the Cleveland Browns. Can Baker Mayfield elevate you? Is Baker Mayfield that dude? On to the Cincinnati Bengals, the final team in the AFC North. And my biggest question for the Cincinnati Bengals is, can you keep Joe Burrow upright? And this is very similar to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Joe Burrow played really well for a rookie last year. He was on pace to compete with Justin Herbert for that Rookie of the Year award. Obviously, he got hurt, and that was kind of the overbearing story in Cincinnati. People kind of forget that Joe Burrow was playing as well as he did last year because he wasn't protected. He tore up his knee. He's apparently ready to go. He's ready to play this season, but the Bengals didn't do a whole lot to improve that offensive line. A lot of Bengals fans want to say, hey, we signed Riley Reiff. But if Riley Reiff is who you're depending on improving your entire offensive line, that's a tough spot to put Joe Burrow in. And this is still probably one of the worst offensive lines in football. And they had a chance to get Penei Sewell, who a lot of people think is a generational tackle. They instead decided to go with Jamar Chase. And that's going to be a question that, is that a mistake? Is taking Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell, is that going to come back to bite them in the where? Jamar Chase, no doubt, is an extremely talented wide receiver. I think that, there's a good chance he could win Rookie of the Year. I think he's a dynamic player, and you probably won't regret taking him, but will you regret not helping Joe Burrow with more protection? Because you can have all the talent in the world, you can have all the receivers in the world, but if your quarterback doesn't have any time to throw, that's going to be tough. And can Zach Taylor, their coach there, can he, get Joe Burrow in situations where the ball's out of his hands quick, draw plays, play action stuff where Joe Burrow's not in situations to have his knee torn up like he did during his rookie season. To me, you cannot have Joe Burrow under the amount of pressure that he was last year for much longer. You cannot waste the career of a potential generational quarterback, of a guy who's going to come in and be a franchise quarterback. You can't waste his career by not surrounding him with ideal protection. Now, you went out and you got a receiver, and maybe that's what he needed, another weapon. But to me, the biggest question is, can they keep him upright? Whether that's with this offensive line miraculously improving, or it's going out and trading for a guy, or drawing up plays where Joe Burrow's not in situations like that, whether it's play action, RPO, stuff like that. Whatever you need to do, you just need to keep Joe Burrow upright. Then moving on to the AFC South, and we'll start with the Tennessee Titans, a team that made the playoffs again last year, won the AFC South. And my biggest question is there enough weapons for Ryan Tannehill? Look at this receiver group. They lost a lot. Just based on this free agency period, they lost Corey Davis, they lost Jonnu Smith, two big time receivers on this team. There's not a whole lot there for Ryan Tannehill to throw to. It's basically A.J. Brown and a bunch of middling guys. They brought in Josh Reynolds from Los Angeles. They've been rumored in trades for Julio Jones. If they bring him in, that certainly fills a big need for them. But they don't have a ton of cap room. So to me, Ryan Tannehill is the type of guy that, if he is in a situation where he's surrounded by the proper talent, and Derrick Henry is a big part of that, and he's still there, so you like that there. But you need to have not Lamar Jackson. You need to have Ryan Tannehill surrounded by the proper talent, and if you don't, he might not perform to the way that we've seen him perform under Arthur Smith, who's now the head coach in Atlanta. You have a new offensive coordinator with Todd Downing. Can he get the best out of the guys he has? Can Ryan Tannehill get the best that he has? Or best that he can out of the guys that he has? He no longer has Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith. It's basically A.J. Brown. And he still has Derrick Henry, but like I talked about earlier with the Baltimore Ravens, you can only get so far with that run game. Eventually, you're going to need Ryan Tannehill to step up. And does he have the proper weapons? Does he have the proper environment to succeed? He's shown us that he's been a really good quarterback the last couple of years, like one of the best in the NFL. Can he keep that going? Is that sustainable even when the talent around him is not as good? And then on to the Indianapolis Colts. They had a potential franchise changing offseason when they brought in Carson Wentz. A lot of people saying, he's going to have a rebirth of his career. I think I've said it a few times. I like the spot that Carson Wentz landed in Indianapolis. But my biggest question for them is Carson Wentz fixable? Can you fix Carson Wentz? And as good as of a spot that he ended up in, and I had this debate with Jeremy Klump, who was a guest on this podcast on Twitter. I might have to bring him back on the podcast to talk about it again. He seems to be of the mind that the biggest reason Carson Wentz was terrible last year was because the talent around him was terrible. No offensive line, no receivers, and to a certain extent, I agree. I agree with that. I understand he didn't have a whole lot of talent, like really bad talent at times. However, you cannot tell me that Carson Wentz wasn't a player who just completely lost his confidence last year. I mean, he was awful. And a lot of people are convinced that Frank Reich is the guy who can, come in there and fix him and get him right, get him back to his MVP level. Not that he ever won an MVP, but he was close at one point. And to me, that's the biggest question. This is hinging on Carson Wentz. This is another team that they have a strong roster, a defense that is really good. I wouldn't be surprised to maybe see that defense take a step back just because of how good they were last year. I don't know if that's completely sustainable. I think there's still some holes in that defense. Some of the guys in the secondary I don't trust totally, but they might take a step back. And if that happens, you're going to need Carson Wentz to be even better than Phillip Rivers was last year. Phillip Rivers didn't quite get it done. So can Carson Wentz be fixed? Can he go back to being a potential franchise quarterback? And if he can, this team's flying. You just got your quarterback for the next 15 years. But that's still a huge question, and that's still unanswered for the Indianapolis Colts. So that's the biggest question for the Colts. Now moving on to the Houston Texans, who they've had a rough offseason. Maybe the most discouraging offseason for a team in NFL history. I mean, I can't think of an offseason where a team just was completely destroyed the way that the Houston Texans have been this offseason. And my big question for the Houston Texans is, what's left? What is left of this team? Like I said, the most discouraging offseason we've ever seen from a football team. I mean, they lost DeAndre Hopkins last year, so that wasn't this offseason, but they lost J.J. Watt, who kind of asked to be released. He was released. He's in Arizona now. Deshaun Watson, we still don't know what's going on there. I would assume he will never play for the Houston Texans again, but we don't know for sure. And now you're in a situation where, is Tyrod Taylor going to be starting games at quarterback for you? Is Davis Mills, the quarterback they drafted in the third round, is he going to be starting games for you? What the heck do fans and season ticket holders have to root for on this team? Genuinely, like, what is there to root for? You lost everything. You were one of the teams with the highest upside just a few years ago, and everything's gone. DeAndre Hopkins is gone. J.J. Watt's gone. Deshaun Watson's most likely gone. What is there to root for? How are they going to sell tickets? That's what I want to know. How are they going to sell jerseys? Whose jersey are you buying on that team right now? You just have a bunch of middling players that you signed that are probably going to be done after this year because they all signed 1-year contracts. It's like, what, like, I don't understand how anybody would want to go to this team's games this year. And that's kind of my question, is like, what is there left for fans to cheer for on this team? There's essentially nothing left for this team. Will they win any games? Who knows? Maybe they don't want to win any games. Maybe that's the plan. But I know that probably wasn't the plan when David Culley took the job. And that probably wasn't the plan when their new GM got there, whose name I'm blanking on right now, Nick Caserio. That was probably not the plan when he took that job. But this is just a mess of a team, and I don't know what's left for them. Now on to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had the number 1 pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. They went with Trevor Lawrence, but still my biggest question for this team is, who is Urban Meyer, their new head coach? Obviously, we know who Urban Meyer, the college coach, is. One of the greatest college coaches in the history of college football. Won multiple national championships for 2 different, or for a few different colleges. Won a national championship in Florida. Won a national championship in Ohio State. One of the greatest to ever do it. Constantly winning. Undefeated seasons. All that good stuff from Urban Meyer. But who is he as an NFL head coach? So far, he's kind of been a meme. Everything he's done has kind of been like, people questioning it, making fun of it. He's brought in Tim Tebow, which everybody likes to make a big fuss out of. He brought in an assistant coach that was a racist who, he got fired just I think a day after he got hired. That didn't look good for Urban Meyer. To me, before this all happened, before Urban Meyer ended up in Jacksonville, he would have been the last college coach that I would have assumed would end up in the NFL, just because his thing at Ohio State, his thing at Florida was that he was an incredible recruiter. He was really good at recruiting. And we know in the NFL there is no recruiting. You can't recruit 5-star players every year. You have to draft well. You have to bring in free agents. You can't just get the best players. You can't just schedule these Division II opponents and get easy wins at the beginning of the schedule. Things are harder in the NFL. What is his offensive scheme going to look like? What is his offense going to look like? What is his defense going to look like? Can he actually improve this team? I'm genuinely baffled about what we're going to see out of Urban Meyer. I could see this going multiple different ways. I could see it being, a success. He brings his team back and we're all like, wow, Urban Meyer's incredible. I could also see it just being a complete failure. And, we're 2 seasons in. They've won a combined 6 games in 2 seasons. And Urban Meyer's back, working for Fox Sports and just never talks of his NFL career ever again. But to me, that's the biggest question for this Jaguars team. They have young talent. I think there's still a ton of holes on this roster. I talk about that every time when I talk about this team. But who is Urban Meyer? What is he going to do? Can he turn this team around? That's the biggest question for me. So we're about halfway done these questions now. We're going to take a little break for an advertisement. That's right, Joe. You want to take the ad read here?
You want me to do the ad read?
Yeah, we're going to take a little break for an advertisement. Go ahead.
Okay, so this week's episode is sponsored by AmpMe. AmpMe is an app where you and your friends, you ever hanging out with your friends and you realize, man, we need some tunes. Oh man, we forgot the Bluetooth speaker.
Oh,
shoot. What else is there to do? AmpMe. AmpMe is basically an app where you guys can connect all your phones together and play the same song at the same time. And for only $40 a month, probably, I think.
Only $40 every time you use it.
Yeah.
It's the low price.
Mm-hmm.
And if you use the promo code Average Joe right now, it's actually $45 a month.
Yeah.
So you'll get $5 extra because we're not actually sponsored by AmpMe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if that's really a thing.
Did you actually want to do an ad read, or are you just
No, that was
doing improv?
Yeah, that was improv. I wanted to test you. You did really good. We brought AmpMe back into the podcast.
That's it too.
One day the AmpMe people are going to get a hold of this podcast and we're going to get sued.
Yeah, but that's good clout, I think.
Yeah,
right?
that's good. I think because then we can have a lot of people supporting us and it'll be like a hashtag because we're like the small guy.
Yes.
And this big company.
Small businesses.
Yeah, exactly. So AmpMe, come at us, bro.
Any publicity is good publicity.
Exactly right. Let's jump back into the questions.
Sure.
Moving on to the AFC East, the Buffalo Bills, who made it to the AFC Championship game, fell to the Kansas City Chiefs. A fantastic season. Josh Allen played phenomenal. Incredible improvement all across the board for the Bills last year. My biggest question for the Bills is, can you run it back? They've kind of went the Tampa Bay Buccaneers route, where they they just brought everybody back. Obviously, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl, and the Buffalo Bills didn't quite get there. But other than adding really Emmanuel Sanders and a couple other like middling contracts, they're essentially bringing back the exact same team they had last year. And is that sustainable for the Buffalo Bills? This team improved like tremendously last year from where they were the year before. Josh Allen's improvement was astronomical. I mean, like comparing his statistics, let me just pull it up here. Comparing his statistics from 2019 to 2020 is ridiculous. We have never seen a quarterback improve the way Josh Allen improved this season. In 2019, he completed 58% of his passes. 2020, 69, almost 70% of his passes. Threw 37 touchdowns this last season. Threw 20 the year before. He had 9 interceptions last year. He had 10 this year. So I guess that didn't really improve all that much. But just improving, from being a quarterback that I thought was a bust. I talked a lot of junk about Josh Allen going into last season. He came out, made me look completely stupid, played out of this world, played really, really well. And to me, the biggest question is that sustainable? Can he sustain that pace? Can he continue to play at a high level? Is this an offense that teams can figure out? Is this an offense that teams can, figure out ways to work around? Teams could not figure it out last year, really. Even, in games that they lost, they just got outscored by the Chiefs. It was so hard for teams to stop this offense last year. Can you sustain that this year? Brian Daboll's back, their offensive coordinator. Like I said, they brought a ton of guys back. They had a bunch of free agents. They basically re-signed everybody. So can the Bills run it back in a division that's a lot better than it was last year? I think the Dolphins improved. The Patriots definitely improved. The Jets definitely improved. It's going to be harder. I don't think it's a guaranteed 6 wins out of your division like it was last year. Moving on to the Miami Dolphins. They finished 10-6 last year, just narrowly missed the playoffs because of an embarrassing loss to the Buffalo Bills, who we just were talking about in week 17 last year. To me, the biggest question for the Dolphins is, what will this offense look like under Tua? We could easily just be like, the question could be, will Tua be a franchise quarterback? I tried to kind of not have every single team, the question be blank, blank, blank quarterback. I didn't want to make every single thing about quarterback, but I want to know what this offense is going to look like around Tua, because this offense last year, there's no doubt to me and to most people that watched Dolphins game, Chan Gailey was brought in, the offensive coordinator last year. Chan Gailey was brought in because of Ryan Fitzpatrick. This offense was built for Ryan Fitzpatrick, and you can see that just based on the personnel change that we've seen from last year. Last year, it seemed like they really valued tall receivers who could go up and get those 50-50 balls, because that's what Ryan Fitzpatrick does best. He throws an amazing 50-50 ball. He'll just toss it up into traffic, and he needs guys that can go up and get those. And that's not what Tua is good at. Tua is good at the quick release, accurate passes. That's kind of what we like to see from Tua, because that's what he's good at. And we've seen the personnel change. Last year it was Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, Mac Hollins is a super tall receiver. Mike Gesicki had a big year. A lot of those guys are back. I think all of those guys are really back, but they've brought in a bunch of different type of receivers. They brought in Will Fuller, who's a blazing, speed guy. They brought in Jalen Waddle, who's probably the fastest guy potentially in the NFL as he's coming in his rookie season. They brought in even Robert Foster, who will probably be more of a special teams guy, but he's a receiver that's produced a little bit on some other teams. He's a really fast guy, and I think you can see a shift. The players in Miami are talking about this team. The playbook is changing. It's not the same playbook. They have co-offensive coordinators, which is so bizarre. I mean, they're literally the only team in the NFL with co-offensive coordinators, so that could end up being a complete disaster. But Eric Studsville and George Godsey are guys that were there last year under Chan Gailey. So that makes me a little queasy because Chan Gailey's offense last year was brutal. And it just did not work for Tua. And you could tell when Tua came in, the offense was completely different than it was with Ryan Fitzpatrick. And they didn't trust Tua last year. So they'll need to, put more trust in him. And I think they will put more trust in him. And they've surrounded him with talent. They have a lot of offensive talent. Their receiving core went from one of the worst in the NFL last year to, probably a top half of the league, top 10, 15 receiving core in the league, and could be even higher by the end. So to me, it's the biggest question is, what is this offense going to look like? Is there going to be more RPOs? Is there going to be more, short passes, play action passes? I think there's going to be less 50-50 balls. There's going to be less, just throwing it into traffic and hoping Mike Gesicki goes up and gets it. I think we're going to see a dramatic change. And, can Tua take that next step? Can this team take that next step? Because like we talked about with the Bills, this division is a lot better than it was last year. And you're not going to get easy wins against the Patriots and the Jets. They only got a 1 win against the Patriots last year. And I think they'll be lucky to get, to split that series with the Patriots this year. So, that's the biggest question for me for the Dolphins. And now on to the Patriots. And the biggest question I have with the Patriots is, can you live up to the hype? This was the team that won the offseason. Not only did they have an insane free agency where they had this newfound aggression, they had a pretty good draft everybody liked. But in free agency, they went nuts. They went out and signed the 2 best tight ends, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, trying to bring back Gronk and Aaron Hernandez just without the murder this time. They signed Nelson Aguilar. They brought in Kendrick Bourne. Defensively, they got Matthew Judon, Kyle Van Noy's back from Miami. Jalen Mills is there. They brought in just so many guys to improve this team. So they were the winner of the offseason. But oftentimes, the team that wins the offseason does not win when it really matters. And that's the biggest question for the Patriots. Can they win when it matters? This team, they're playing in a tough division. They don't have Tom Brady anymore. So, you're trying to recreate that magic with Gronk and, Aaron Hernandez, but you're missing the biggest piece. You don't have Tom Brady anymore. You have Cam Newton and you have Mac Jones. Another question you could ask is, who's going to be the starting quarterback there? Is it going to be Cam Newton or will Mac Jones impress them? And he's in that Tom Brady role where, he's not an athletic guy, but he maybe, fits what they want to do better than a guy like Cam Newton. So to me, the biggest question for the Patriots is, can you live up to the hype from free agency, from the draft, from the offseason? Can they improve as much as everybody seems to think that they will? And on to the New York Jets. And to me, the biggest question for the Jets is the perceived culture change or culture shift real? Will we see a culture shift? Everybody has been singing praises about them bringing in their head coach, Robert Saleh. He's going to come in. He's going to shift the culture. It's going to be a brand new culture there in New York. No more Adam Gase nonsense. Robert Saleh is the guy. To me, is that real? Will that really happen? We've seen that, time and time again. When a coach comes in, it's a brand new culture. We're gonna be hard nosed. We're gonna be tough. Things are gonna be different. Is that real? Can that really happen? I think they've had a nice offseason. They've improved a lot. I don't think they'll be playoff contenders this year. They're not going to be a team that's going to be competing for a Super Bowl. But can you just improve? Can you get better than you were last year? Can the culture change? Can you build around your quarterback like you did not do with Sam Darnold last year? And can Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh live up to the hype? Like we talked about with the Patriots. Can those guys live up to the hype? And that's the biggest question for me for a team that's not going to be competitive this year, I don't think. They'll win more games than last year, but can they just show improvement, show that they're going in the right direction? Now on to the final division, and it's the AFC West. And starting with the winning team from last year of this division and the Super Bowl runner-ups, and it's the Kansas City Chiefs. And my question for them is, what is defense? Because I think that's what they are asking, is what is defense? Because they don't seem to care much about improving their defense. And they've done small things, like they brought in Jaron Reed in offseason. They have Tyrann Mathieu. Chris Jones is really good. And they have some players, but overall their defense is not very good. But it just hasn't been very good for years and years, and it doesn't seem to matter. And my question, I guess, for them is it going to continue to not matter? You lost Sammy Watkins in free agency, so you don't have a ton of receivers, but you still have Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, who are the best at their positions probably. You have Patrick Mahomes, who's the best quarterback in the NFL. So does it really matter that you don't have a defense? Does it matter that your defense is probably bottom half of the league, if not lower than that? So far, it hasn't mattered. And will that continue to happen for the Chiefs? If I had to guess, I would say yes. I think they've shown us time and time again that they can succeed this way. I don't see why they wouldn't continue to succeed this way. And then on to the Las Vegas Raiders. And my biggest question for the Raiders is, when will all of these unconventional picks actually pay off? So we've seen it every draft. The Las Vegas Raiders like to go off the board. They like to go with players that people have projected as a third, fourth round player. They pick them in the first round. They did it with Alex Leatherwood this year. They've done it with Damon Arnett in the past. They did it with Henry Ruggs, taking him as the number one receiver when a lot of people did not have him as the number one receiver, and that's fine. I've always said that they did it with Cleveland Farrell. Can't forget that one. But I've always said, who cares about value when it comes to the draft? Everybody wants to talk about value. If you get a really good player, who cares where you got him? Nobody's going to care where you drafted a guy if he ends up being a Hall of Famer. But the problem is you need your players to work out. If you're going to overdraft guys, if you're going to take guys where they shouldn't be taken, they got to be good. And so far that hasn't happened in Las Vegas. The Raiders just haven't been able to develop these players that they're reaching on. We haven't seen Cleveland Farrell step up. We haven't seen Henry Ruggs, in one season. He didn't look like he was worth being the first receiver taken. We haven't seen Damon Arnett step up. Jonathan Abram, a guy that they took that a lot of people liked. I think in the second. No, I think they took him in he's a first round pick as well. A lot of people liked that pick. He was literally graded as the worst safety in the NFL last year. So that hasn't worked out. Can you develop these players? Mike Mayock is definitely on the hot seat, I think, because they're not going to get rid of John Gruden. John Gruden's not going to be the guy that's out there. He's got the 10-year contract. Mike Mayock is going to be depending on these players being developed. And when you take swings like this and you go with guys, that you like, they're your guys, they have to work out. And so far they haven't in Las Vegas. Now on to the Los Angeles Chargers. And my big question for the Chargers is, can Brandon Staley get the best out of this talented roster? So we do the same song and dance every year with the Chargers. Everybody says this team is so talented. They're going to be so good. Wow, this team is really good. And they disappoint every year. Somebody gets hurt. A bunch of people get hurt. They underperform. Brandon Staley, a lot of people like this hire as head coach. Can he come in and actually get the best out of this talented roster? Can he come in and be who everybody thinks he can be? This team has talent. Derwin James is coming back. Justin Herbert was phenomenal last year, won Rookie of the Year. They have Keenan Allen still. They have Mike Williams. A talented roster. But can they finally live up to the hype? Kind of like we talked about with the Patriots. Every year we talk about the Chargers and how they're going to be good, and every year they disappoint. Can they live up to the hype? Can Brandon Staley get the best out of this team? He's kind of new to coaching. We didn't not a lot of people knew his name before he got hired in Los Angeles. Can he get the best out of Justin Herbert? And Justin Herbert can have all these numbers, and play, as good as he did, but if you don't get wins, none of it matters, and you can't waste a career like you did with Phillip Rivers with Justin Herbert. Now, finally, the final team is the Denver Broncos, and my big question for them is, what's Aaron Rodgers' phone number? Because you need to get it. You need to break the rules. You need to, what's that word again? You need to tamper with Aaron Rodgers. You need to tell him, hey, man, force your way to Denver. Because if you look at this roster, we've talked time and time again throughout this segment, all these teams with these talented rosters. This might be the most talented out of them all. I mean, this team has talent all across the board. And the one, thing that sticks out like a sore thumb is the quarterback position. You have Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. That's not going to sell tickets. I mean, I know Broncos fans, they'll sell out the stadium anyways, but they're not coming to see Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. If you can go out and get Aaron Rodgers, that changes the perspective of this team. This team has probably a top 5 defense, one of the best secondaries in the NFL.
You have Bradley Chubb, Von Miller's coming back. You have a really good offensive line. You're young. You have just stupid talented pass catchers. I mean, just young talented guys. Jerry Jeudy wasn't great last year, but I think he can develop into a really good pass catcher. You have Noah Fant, KJ Hamler, a ton of just really Cortland Sutton, really talented pass catchers. A really good backfield with Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, who you drafted. Really, really good players. If you add Aaron Rodgers to this team like they've been rumored to trade for, that they're immediately a Super Bowl contender. They might be the Super Bowl favorite to me. So if that can completely change the complexion of this team. So to me, if I'm Denver, I'm trying everything I can to get Aaron Rodgers. I'll give them whatever it takes to get Aaron Rodgers because I have the roster to compete right now, and all that's going to be holding me back, I think, is the quarterbacks. I don't think Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater are guys that are going to, be able to take the team to the next level. They're guys that are just going to be as good as the talent around them is. And even though the talent around them is really good, that can only get you so far. Like we've seen with Jared Goff in Los Angeles, you can only get so far. You need a quarterback that can take you over the top. And that's exactly what Aaron Rodgers could do. So you got to get his number. You got to tell him, hey, man, you can go host Jeopardy if you want. Just come and win a Super Bowl or multiple Super Bowls here in Denver. But that wraps up one big question for every team in the AFC. We're going to be doing the NFC next week. Stay tuned for that. I hope you guys enjoyed. Joe, I don't know if you have anything you want to say before we close up the show. No? Awesome. Then I'll just take it from here. Make sure you guys follow us on social media at _AverageJoe Show. Make sure you tune into Blue Collar Media Group. They have our podcast, a ton of other really great podcasts. Follow them on Twitter, on Instagram. Go to their website. Check out my articles that I'm writing. Check out everybody's articles that are being written there. Make sure you give us a 5-star review. Make sure you share the podcast. And without further ado, we will catch you guys on the next one.